Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Almighty and everlasting God, we thank you for giving us this special day. Once again, we begin with prayer to acknowledge our dependence on you as our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Bless our President and the citizens of our land. Give us perseverance to press on through discouragement and gratitude to acknowledge you in any success. You have been the people's guide for the past 300 years, and you still on the people's side. We have no doubts or fears. We give special thanks that we live in a nation where a peaceful readjustment of government is expected and affirmed through free elections. We ask your blessing on those newly elected and re-elected to this chamber. Bless them and their families, as well as those who support or challenge them. May they fully understand the trust that has been given to them to represent and serve your people. Assist us all this day and every day. So, Lord God, what we know not, teach us. What we have not, give us. What we are not, make us, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Before we start. Could we stand and acknowledge a moment's silence for the passing of Mr. Neville Maxwell, Ms. Sybil Licott, and Mr. Eggerborn, please? This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Friday, 20th February 2026 to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour the Speaker. Messages from His Excellency the President, petitions, papers, government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 1, sir. In the name of the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Economic Affairs and Development, to move the second reading of the Constitution Amendment Bill 2026.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Let me, in what this morning is the first debate since our opening on Friday, once again congratulate you on your election to the Speaker's chair. This morning, we have before us a very simple bill, but one that is fundamental for the stability of our democracy. The amendment which is before us is about mandate integrity. It applies only to a member of parliament who was elected as a candidate of a political party and who then later either resigns from that party, is expelled by that party, or formally crosses the floor to another political alignment. It is fundamentally about protecting the voter's choice. It does not deal with how a member votes. It does not deal with the fact that members may sometimes dissent from their political parties. It does not silence criticism of either the party or the cabinet in any manner or form. It addresses only, sir, a formal change in political allegiance after an election. The process, Mr. Speaker, is structured and clear. It strengthens democratic accountability in our system. It supports stability and predictability in governance. And it encourages transparency in political affiliation, while at the end of the day, providing a constitutional process rather than an ad hoc process for the resolution of political conflict. And as I said, the process is clear. The notice to the Speaker comes from the Leader of Parliamentary Business in the House of Assembly, whether that is Leader of Government Business or, where applicable, Leader of Opposition Business, and where has happened in the past before with multiple oppositions, Leader of Opposition Business of either party is spoken to in this amendment. In practical terms, this means that whether it is the Leader of the Government Business or the Leader of Opposition Business, they are the ones who will provide the notice to which this section and amendment refers. This notice does not remove anyone. That is a constitutional process that is initiated by this notice simply. The Speaker will then make a declaration at the next sitting of the House. If the declaration is resignation or expulsion, there is a defined period of 14 days to challenge that allegation in a court of law before any vacancy takes place. So there are checks and balances embedded in the amendment. It is also, sir, important to be honest about standards. Expulsion from a political party is not a casual event. Indeed, it is exceedingly rare in my time in this chamber. In the case of the Barbados Labour Party, expulsion carries a very, very high threshold. And there are 4 grounds that I'll come to later that constitute the basis for that expulsion. I want to say clearly, sir, this is not a tool of convenience. It is a serious constitutional mechanism tied to a serious change in political status. And it is prevalent in the world in over 40 countries across the entire world, many of whom are Commonwealth countries. So that we are not breaking new ground in the Parliament of Barbados by the passage of this legislation. At its core, sir, it basically says that if the political alignment under which you were elected changes fundamentally, the democratic response is to return that question to the electorate, go back to the voter. So it does not preclude or prevent whoever is affected from going back to the voter and serving in this institution again. And let me be very clear, sir. When we go to the election, as we just did, and we go to the electorate, to the voters, invariably, we introduce ourselves by name and the candidate for a political party, if we are so, and if you are an independent, you say that. In my certain experience over the course of the last 35, 36 years, people go and say, I am Mia Motley. I am the candidate for the Barbados Labour Party in this constituency. I am so-and-so. I am the candidate for the Democratic Labour Party. I am the candidate for whatever party in this constituency. But it goes further, sir. We are also nominated in a formal process by that political party. We are ratified by the councils of that political party to be the candidate. We then subscribe to a manifesto and to a program of activities that make it absolutely clear that we are committed to that platform of that political party. And then we invariably have posters and in recent times billboards associating us with that political party. And then on top of that, in our case in the Barbados Labour Party, we ask persons to sign to the program that is constituted in the manifesto because we believe that manifesto to be a social contract, or as we have stated in this last manifesto, even higher, a covenant with the people whom we are asking to vote for us. We come to you, we stand for a particular set of values. We stand for a particular philosophy. We stand for a particular set of programs. And while there was a time in the last few decades where the division with respect to how you stand on programs and philosophy may have become blurred, it is absolutely clear that we are living in a world today where there is deep philosophical divisions intruding again into the body politic, not just of Barbados, but of the entire globe. And therefore, the platform on which you stand is going to take an even greater role in the choice that voters have to make as to whether they want to go this way or this way. I don't use my left hand and my right hand for the purposes of declaring left of center or right of center, but if that is how you want to interpret it, that is a matter for you. Because that is how it was interpreted for decades in post-World War II in particular, when the Cold War dominated the geopolitics of the world. Now, I say this, but recognize that even without the high divisions of philosophical differences, there is also differences in approaches with respect to whether one party believes in decentralization, one party believes in centralization, which really became the major difference between the two parties for many decades before we got to this stage. Sir, I believe that that clear representation of who you are and what you stand for to the voter is such that there ought to be a level of carefulness in the manner in which we treat the mandate which was given. And part of the difficulty, I suspect, sir, is that in a very real sense, we are seeing an evolution in the world and a further democratization and importance of the voter and the individual in democracies in a way that may not necessarily have been there in the early stages of most democracies across the world. Many subscribed to the view that the parliament was sacrosanct, but placed members of parliament at a level that made them dominant and made them the focus of all once elected. Indeed, I believe it is the famous Edmund Burke who told the electors of Bristol in a speech in 1774, Sir Edmund Burke, who argued that Parliament was a deliberative body of free agents and not a congress of ambassadors of various interests. And to quote him directly, he said, "You choose a member indeed, but when you have chosen him, he is not a member of Bristol, but he's a member of Parliament." Now, we do not subscribe to that view. We believe that the person has a duty, yes, to their constituents, but the constituents equally are the ones who have to be seen and have to be heard. And if all that you needed to do was to use the constituents as a platform to get into Parliament and then do as you would, then that is a complete repudiation of the very system of democracy that we have come to public life to protect and to create opportunities for the very citizens who you now ignore and believe that they are no longer a part and parcel of the process. Sir, the notion of crossing the floor is well known across the world. And for those who say that it needs to be defined, I simply remind them that statutory interpretation very often requires that we give the words their ordinary meaning. If I go to Africa and I say cross the floor, they know what I'm talking about in Ghana. They know what I'm talking about in Nigeria. They know what I'm talking about in Kenya. If I go to India, the country that gave you the chair in which you now sit, sir, and one of the oldest democracies in the Commonwealth, sir, they know what you mean when you say cross the floor. If I go to Canada, a place that the member for Christchurch West is well familiar with, they know what you mean when you say cross the floor. And if I go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines or Trinidad and Tobago or Jamaica or Guyana, they know what you mean when you say cross the floor. So that I do not believe that this requires any further definition from our part, on our part. But suffice it to say that one of the things that we are clear about is that it is the voter who ought to be able to make the decision. Nobody is saying that the member of parliament cannot fall out with a political party. Nobody is saying that a member of parliament cannot leave or act in a way that has put their behavior totally contrary to a political party. It happens in families, it happens in employment relationships, it will happen in political relationships as well. The only point is this, and of course it doesn't matter if the change of political affiliation comes before the election, as in the case of the member for the city of Bridgetown. What matters is your changing on the floor of the House, your position having been elected. And in Barbados, we have had two instances in recent times. The first one was almost immediately after the election took place, in circumstances where persons, I suspect, are still wondering what really was the cause of that action. Because less than 2 weeks before, the person had signed a document committing to the principles, philosophy, and programs of this political party. The second one came during the course of the term. And once again, that one was even more curious because the person never went back even to tell the constituents of that particular constituency that they were no longer supporting the party that elected him along with them. So that when the voters of Christchurch South went to the polls, they did not simply elect a man, they elected a man who was the candidate for a particular party. And I come to this issue about whether political parties can be recognized or not. Mr. Speaker, the one thing that the law must not be is an ass. The one thing that the law must not be is an ass. We have for 88 years next month known what it is to have a political party contest candidates, put a slate of candidates for electoral purposes in this country. Barbadians have seen it and engaged in elections over the course of those 88 years, not just for that party, but for many other political institutions, some of which have come and gone. The Electors Association, the Barbados National Party. Subsequent to the formation of the Barbados Labour Party in the 1950s, you had the formation of the Democratic Labour Party, which I believe is in its 70th year, but I speak subject to correction. So that the notion that we do not know what a political party is to really make ourselves look like clowns in the presence of our constituents. And I will not participate in that sophistry, or I will not participate in anything that seeks to demean the intellect or common sense of the average Barbadian. They know that when they refer to 30 Love, or 2010, or 22-8, that they are referring not to the fact of an individual election, but to the collective number of seats held by a political party. We have a situation where we are simply seeking to bring order and to strengthen democratic accountability in this country with respect to the voting of persons. When you go to an election, you are correct in looking at the manifesto. It is true that the last manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party came so late that I suspect a lot of people did not have a chance to look at it. But the Barbados Labour Party has made it a staple part of its work in an electoral process to issue two documents. One, if we are going back for re-election, a document that speaks to our record, because we believe you must be accountable to the people who elect you, and it puts them at the center of the process again. And two, that there must be a manifesto that says to people, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what we will do. And we have added a further document in the modern incarnation of this political party with the Covenant of Hope. That was approved and launched in 2016. It was approved by the annual conference at Foundation School of the Barbados Labour Party in 2015, and it was launched in 2016 because we felt that it was important to state to the people of this country who we are and what we stand for. Now, that would only mean something to those who take this seriously. If you see this as purely a platform upon which to ride on the backs of voters to get into the House of Assembly, then you may have a difficulty with what I'm saying. But if you recognize that this is fundamentally about offering people a choice based on philosophy, based on programs, based on policies, then it becomes absolutely clear that we must protect the voter's choice. We do not harm the person who wants to move or who has moved, because they have the opportunity to go back to the electorate and to say, here I am again, please vote for me. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the things that people have also said, and I addressed it briefly in the opening, is that this stops people from criticizing parties. Mr. Speaker, I have been in this honorable chamber now for 31 years, and in the other place, I was there for 3.5 years. I don't know that I ever want to go back there other than to visit temporarily, as the law now allows me to do. But what is significant is that I have seen multiple occasions of people varying from the whip, making speeches that are critical of the government, making speeches that are even critical of the opposition party to which they belong. And in many, in virtually all instances, I have never seen any of those speeches become the reason for a person to have been expelled or for disciplinary action taken in this country by a political party for a speech made on the floor of the House just so. And Mr. Speaker, I say so conscious that as leader of this political party at this time, I have taken a very broad approach and recognize that human beings don't always reach the same point and they do not always agree on every single issue. But that does not mean that we are fundamentally opposed to each other or that we have repudiated what the political party in essence stands for. And therefore, it is absolutely important that I repeat that this bill does not stop a member of parliament from speaking their mind. It does not stop a member of parliament from holding cabinet accountable. It does not stop a member of parliament from voting their conscience. The member for St. Peter is a devout Seventh-day Adventist. I have led this political party on 2 occasions, from 2008 to 2010, and from 2013 until now. I have never once asked the member for St. Peter to breach any aspect of his conscience with respect to his religious beliefs. And I speak, and I changed how the leader speaks from a Sunday morning to a Saturday afternoon. And I have never once said to him, even when we were preparing for electoral contests, and we would normally want everybody to be present, I have never once said to him, you have to be there or else. Because that is not how we approach matters of conscience. Similarly, if there are things that come here on the death penalty, we accept that a member may have a fundamental position of conscience. That is not going to lead to suspension from a party, far less expulsion. On matters of policy, I have known over the course of the last 36 years on both sides of the House, members speak in fundamental disagreement with policy being aligned, being put on the floor. With respect to the Democratic Labour Party, there perhaps was no more famous one than the division between the then member for St. Philip West and the rest of his front bench with respect to the economic policy at the time. With respect to our own case, there is the famous incident between the then member for St. James South and the member for St. Andrew over Greenland and its use as to what Greenland should have been used for or not used for back in the mid-1990s. But this did not lead to any form of suspension or expulsion on the part of anything. The member for St. Michael East, the honourable member for St. Michael East, has on occasion found it necessary to divide his views from where the rest of the parliamentary party may sit sometimes. And it has not stopped him either from being a member of the party, an elected MP as recently as 3 weeks ago, or indeed a member of cabinet as he is now. I cannot be any clearer as to the fact that we have chosen a very high threshold. There are some countries in the Commonwealth that will seek to take action if you simply cross the party whip. We are not not one of those countries. And it is perhaps useful for persons to reflect on how this has come about in some countries, and it is largely as a result of, in many instances, like with us, where the ability to cross is so easy and to be able to take advantage of the circumstances is so easy that people do it without even thinking twice about it. In our case, there is the additional allure of being able to claim a pension, which I would not want to believe that that is the motivation of persons, but there are some who have expressed that view, and it is not for me to say yes or no, since I would not lie in the hand and the head or minds of the persons taking the action. Suffice it to say that I take my political commitment to the voter and to my party very seriously. By the same token, it is important for us to remember that in other parts of the world, the political instability that comes from this can be deep. And in our own case, let us be very clear. The Democratic Labour Party is going through convulsions today because of the manner in which its political leader assumed office. I want to be very clear on that. The Democratic Labour Party is going through convulsions because a person who abused them, who said that they were not worthy of the support of the electorate in the election which put him in this honorable chamber, all of a sudden didn't only just cross the floor, but became the political leader of that institution because of the peculiar nature of how their constitution is written. Ours isn't written in that way, but suffice it to say that that has led the party to receive and record the second worst electoral performance in the history of that party. The worst being on the last occasion in 2022, and the third worst being in 2018. This is tangential to this debate, but it is significant for me that when you really look at the facts, and even when people speak about turnout, I really want people to recognize that in a very real sense, the Labour Party's vote ranks in the top 3, possibly the top 2, in this country in the last 35 years or so. So that the Barbados Labour Party got its vote out. We outperformed ourselves as a party in 2022. We outperformed our performance in 2013, where we got, by the way, the majority of the popular vote, but lost the actual government in a 16-14 in favor of the Democratic Labour Party, who got less than us in terms of the vote, but more seats than us. And we didn't complain because those are the rules of the first past the post system that we belong to. It is more votes than we got in 2008. It is more votes than Owen Arthur got in 2003. It is more votes than Owen Arthur got in 1994. And the only reason I'm not quoting 1999 is because those numbers were not available on the website of the EBC when I took down the information today. By the same token, the Democratic Labour Party got 32,185 votes in the last election. In the previous election, they got 30,112. In the election before that, they got 33,551. But in 2013, when they lost the popular vote but won the government, they got 69,275 votes. Where has the lack of turnout come from? It is evident that not even 50% of the people came out to vote for them in the last 3 elections that voted for them in 2013. In 2008, they got 78,000 698, still less than what we got in this election, and that was their washout of the Labour Party in 2008. So that I hear people, but I ask people to apply their hearts to the facts. And that this notion that I can easily go on social media and just spout and spout and spout without presenting the facts may well be responsible for a continuous performance of less than 50% of what has been their average or even their worst performances. And I make this point about the importance of political stability. You cannot have, and I think it was a political scientist well known to all of us previously from the university, who said about disingenuous and dishonest leadership solutions to the Democratic Labour Party in recent years. That's not me saying so. And I don't think that he said so with any ill will. He was simply making the point that he did not see a person emerge through the ranks who was affiliated with the institution, who could inspire others who was affiliated with the institution to so relate to them. Now, as I said, we know changes will come. But when changes come, they must come via the voter, not via the individual, capricious, and arbitrary actions of a person who ignores the fact that people walked, people sacrificed time with the family, people gave up time with the workplace, people even got themselves in trouble in certain circumstances because of the passion with which they chose to be able to work with a particular candidate for a particular party, for a particular philosophy, for a particular set of programs. In this last election, I was very clear on what we have to offer to the people of this country. The Democratic Labour Party said they wanted to amend VAT, the value-added tax. We said fundamentally we do not agree with that because it will lead to a consolidation of wealth, and that what will happen is that while you may see government not collecting the revenue from a reduction in VAT, you will not see the concomitant savings being passed on to the consumer in this country, and that it is likely that the savings will be kept by the entity that is selling the good or service to the particular individual. We said, on the other hand, that we prefer to put money in people's pockets and to give people additional disposable income by increasing the reverse tax credit, by increasing who can qualify for the reverse tax credit, increasing the compensatory, those who can qualify for the compensatory income credit, what I came to call in the campaign the government meat and turn, because you pay your taxes and then you get back all of your income taxes. You pay your income tax monthly, but you get it back at the end of the tax year when you file. And that we would consider as well a cost of living cash credit to pensioners, to persons who are in receipt of welfare benefits, and to persons who are in receipt of special needs grants, namely those from the disabled community, adult or children. Those measures already come up to $142 million. And I have every confidence that this party will hold faith with the electorate when the time comes in the next few weeks for us to be able to deal with the second reading speech of the appropriation bill and to do what is commonly known in Bajan parlance as the budget speech, which will take place in the middle of March. We have also committed to look at what we can do with respect to the other tax rates and tax bans for middle class as well, so that there was a very clear program and a very clear division between what the Democratic Labour Party said it would do and what the Barbados Labour Party said it would do with respect to that simple matter of fiscal policy. So that I say this, recognizing therefore that these matters, there may be some people, yes, who may vote for individual because they like them, but those are in the minority. When I first came to public life, the former member for the city of Bridgetown, Dame Billy Miller, sat down myself and Elizabeth Thompson and others who were young in the party and reminded us, even before the National Democratic Party was created, I think in 1989, that very few people can win a seat as an independent in a mass-based environment, political party environment. And it was becoming more and more difficult. The irony was that Sir Richard Haynes lost his seat in 1991 after forming the National Democratic Party and after taking the opposition from the Barbados Labour Party, who then became the minority opposition, and the same Dame Billy Miller and Sir Louis Tull were removed from the Senate as opposition senators because the NDP became the official opposition of the country. Now, in 1986, when the people went to vote, they didn't necessarily vote for that. And the question is, even if you supported the basis for which he left, is it right for them to do so without going back to the electorate for validation? And that is all this bill is about, sir. That is all this bill is about. And if you look at India, if you look, and I can go through a number of countries, you look across the Pacific, you look within the Caribbean, there are countries all over the world. Angola, Bangladesh, Belize, Bhutan, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Fiji, Guyana, Ghana, India, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Nepal, Niger, Nigeria, Panama, Papua New Guinea, Portugal, Rwanda, Senegal, Seychelles. There are different, Singapore. We like to call Singapore all the time. There are different rules. And in some instances, there are first past the post systems. In some instances, it is proportional representation. Some instances, it is mixed. Trinidad and Tobago is the one perhaps closest to us that also has a first past the post system. So Sri Lanka, Tanzania, Thailand. So that we are not breaking new ground here in Barbados, but we are seeking to come to terms with a reality that, if left unchecked, will continue to undermine people's integrity in the democratic process, people's belief that there is need for stability and predictability in the governance of a nation, and for what happened to the Democratic Labour Party not to happen by way of an ad hoc political moment, but to go through a formal constitutional process that provides certainty to the voter, certainty to the political institutions, certainty to the systems under which we operate. Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't know that I can be any clearer. What I would like to do for the purposes of the record, is to be able to look and see specifically and read into the record why expulsion from a political party is equally not a matter that is done, as I said, purely on the basis of dissent or voting according to conscience or wanting to criticize cabinet. These things are not done. And the sections of the Barbados Labour Party's constitution, which, by the way, can only be changed by an annual conference or a special convention with a 2/3 majority, with the appropriate notices being given ahead of time. So you can't wake up tonight and decide that they want to change or a constitution to be able to change these things. But according to Part 15, discipline, Section 77 of the Constitution, and I read it for the purposes of the record. The National Council of the party reserves the right to discipline through suspension or expulsion any member for any of the following reasons. A, if he joins another political party. B, if he canvasses for or speaks on a platform on behalf of a candidate of an opposing party. C, if he gives or leaks confidential or important information in such a way to cause embarrassment or harm to the party. And D, if through writings or utterances or in any other way it can be established that he acted in a manner inimical to the best interests of the party. Now, while political parties are not subject to the Administrative Justice Act, the rules in the Administrative Justice Act, and I believe the member for St. Thomas can speak at length to this because he taught this subject at the University of the West Indies until here recently, that the rules reflected in the AJA, the Administrative Justice Act, are rules and principles in public and administrative law. And the jurisprudence has in fact widened, not narrowed, widened with respect to how it places on entities an obligation not just to respect the rules of natural justice, but also to respect, in very clear terms, different principles, whether it is proportionality, whether it is protecting against arbitrary decisions, protecting against unfair decisions, protecting against irrational decisions. There's a whole set of case law. And the irony is, I leave here today to go to CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in St. Kitts. And it was in St. Kitts in 2009 that I, along with the current Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honourable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, represented political institutions there in cases that established new precedents within public law and administrative law. And we didn't rely on a statutory framework, we relied on the principles of public and administrative law and the principles of judicial review, which are open to every citizen to be able to protect them. So that in every instance, sir, if a person, separate from what the law provides for in this bill, because the law gives you 14 days to go to the law courts and to challenge any action that relates to expulsion. But you have on your side much case law, much precedent, the precepts of public and administrative law and judicial review, to be able to ensure that there can be no arbitrary, unfair, inappropriate, reckless, disproportionate action taken by any entity. And the irony is that we all know this because we see it happen in sporting organizations all the time. How many times have we seen sporting organizations go to the law courts in this country to protect persons from arbitrary conduct of other members or persons leading that association? And this is no different. But what we must have, sir, in this country, if we are to have a stable democracy, is that we must have guardrails. And the guardrails do not go to deny a person their basic right of freedom of expression so long as they contain themselves within the conduct of the party with respect to philosophy and programs, as we all saw with respect to the intent of the constitutional provisions within the Barbados Labour Party. Now, other parties will have different provisions. But whatever provisions the other parties have, they are still subject to fairness. They're still subject to transparency. They're still subject to the rule of natural justice. And therefore, we ought not to frighten people by simply trying to put guardrails in place that strengthen our democratic system and provide for greater transparency and predictability, but above all else, simply seeks to put the voter at the center by protecting the choice of the voter made in an election. This is not a case of restraint of trade, as can happen in employment contracts. This is not a case of suppression of views or dissent. So, Mr. Speaker, I trust that this lays out clearly the reason why we are here with this amendment. As it relates to the broader Constitution, as I indicated, we expect that the full Republic of Barbados Constitution will come before us during the course of the next few months. It is our intention for the Attorney General to be able to carry the country through it in different parts. It is our intention to be able to try as best as possible to have that Constitution in place before the 60th anniversary of independence and the 5th anniversary of our Republic. And we have had a lengthy process of constitutional consultation. I indicated in the last Parliament, sir, that the reason why it was not here is that we felt strongly as a political party, and once again this comes back to our philosophy, that you cannot have a constitution in the third decade of the 21st century that does not speak to the responsibilities of citizens to the nation that they belong to. And that simply to speak to rights without articulating clearly the importance of responsibilities is to ignore the Charter of Barbados, which we passed in this honorable chamber on the eve of our becoming a republic, and which speaks to not only our duty to self, to family, to community and job, but also the country. And I keep making the point, sir, that if we left and had a house, and we did nothing to maintain the house, that over the effluxion of time, over the course of time, that house would become dilapidated. And that if you didn't open it up, the tiles would burst. And if you didn't turn on the taps, the water wouldn't flow easily, or the toilets would not flush when you go to do it. And if you take the same metaphor for how you tend to and treat to the nation, the state, then it becomes important for us to understand that it is not only the role of government to protect the state, but it is the role of each and every citizen to be able to build out and to nurture and to take care of the quality of the institutions first and foremost, but equally of the citizens thereafter. And Mr. Speaker, strong institutions protect democracy. It is the absence of strong institutions very often that lead to problems with respect to states trending and tending to anarchy. And that is why I speak about the need for strong political institutions. And in fact, on the night on which the electoral results came back on the early morning, really, of February 12th, I spoke to this issue, and I continue to do so. And there are things that I think that we can have a sensible conversation to put in place to strengthen the other political institutions. But leaving the process as easy as being able to walk out the house and cross the floor with no consequences clearly has not worked for us. And rather than strengthen our political institutions, it has undermined our political institutions. And for those who believe that political institutions are pariah, well, I can't help that. That is a perspective that some people will have because they don't want anything to do with politics or political people or political institutions. That's unfortunate, because I've seen what strong political institutions have done for the people of this country. Strong political institutions have brought people out of poverty. Strong political institutions have used education as a tool of empowerment. Strong political institutions have given people a piece of the rock in the most comprehensive form of land reform in this hemisphere, with the exception of Cuba. The Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act took people who could not otherwise afford properties and allowed them to become owners of properties in Barbados at 10 cents a square foot. And 40-something years later, they are still able to buy the same plantation tenantries at the same 10 cents a square foot. That is what strong political institutions have done in this country. And when we didn't have strong political institutions, the record of this parliament shows that more often than not, it was an instrument of oppression, an instrument of tyranny. This is the same parliament that passed the 1661 Slave Code that became the platform upon which all other parliaments and all other governments and colonies, as they were at the time, chose to define their relationship with black people and with slaves. So that we know that the very parliament that we stand in has known what it is to be an instrument of oppression, but it has equally, thank God, for sure in the last 75 years since universal adult suffrage became part and parcel of our political process, it has known what it is to see people, feel people, hear people, protect people, and create opportunities. Have we done it all? No, we have not. And that is why we are working as hard as we are to ensure that we can still, one, stop poor people from being poor, two, remove injustice where it occurs, and three, create opportunity and create wealth where we can for our citizens. That is what we have been elected to do as a strong political institution. But when we get diverted and when we get distracted by persons who, let me use the example of family law, who simply choose to walk out the house. Not even in family law can you just walk out the house today and cross to the next house tomorrow morning and get a divorce. Not even in family law. In family law, you have to meet the threshold, which is a much lower threshold than the previous one, of a year's separation and irreconcilable, irretrievable breakdown in marriage with irreconcilable differences. But time must be the test for that. But politically, when we can affect the whole well-being of a country, we want to be able to just allow somebody to say, boy, don't mind what I tell you last month, I changed my mind. And the consequences of changing the mind are not unique to that person, not peculiar to that person, but they are now to be suffered or enjoyed by the entire electorate. We say that we can do better and we must do better. We do not in any way stop that person from becoming a member of parliament if they are popular. The leader of the Democratic Labour Party, the founder leader, Errol Barrow, left the Barbados Labour Party. He eventually found favor, not as an MP in St. George anymore, but as an MP in St. John. And he found favor and captured the imagination of people. It is possible. Richie Haynes captured the imagination of the people of St. Michael South Central. It is possible. But what must not be tolerated is actions that can be viewed as hypocritical and that can be viewed as seeking to trick the voter into actions that the voter might not otherwise have become complicit in if they knew what you really stood for at the particular time. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to be able to introduce this amendment. I urge honorable members in here to recognize that this is about strengthening our democracy and strengthening the political institutions upon which our democracy is rested, but it is also fundamentally about protecting the integrity of the mandate given to us by the voters of this country with respect to an electoral process. And it simply applies, as I said at the beginning, to a member of parliament who was elected as a candidate of a political party, elected as a candidate, later either resigns, crosses the floor, or is expelled in the very limited and few circumstances that are still subject to due process and natural justice that exists. As I said, I've only known of one particular instance, and that one was most unfortunate, but it also went on for a significant period of time, giving that member of parliament every possible opportunity over and over and over and over and over to be able to resolve the situation. The reality is that a person can undermine not just from outside, but also from within. And therefore, if you want strong political institutions, you have to have guardrails. You know what this is akin to, sir? Sometimes it is firm love. And if we have children, and we let the children do any and everything, then things happen and we regret it. We need guardrails in life. We need guardrails in institutions. This is all that it seeks to do, but with the requisite checks and balances to ensure that we do not compromise the individual rights of the person, but at the same time, we protect the voter integrity, the integrity of the voter who has made the choice, and we protect the institutions as well upon whom the whole platform of political engagement has been based in the post-1937 rebellion of Barbados. I ask, therefore, that this bill be now read a second time. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member St. Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, I am obliged to you for the opportunity to contribute to the debate in this bill. At the beginning of every parliamentary career in this House, Mr. Speaker, it is customary that one may pay homage to the persons who have brought me here. But you will permit me on this occasion to acknowledge that I feel obliged to say that it is with the strength and health and sustenance of the Almighty that has put me in a position to become the parliamentary representative for the good people of St. Thomas. I want to acknowledge my family who have made tremendous sacrifice over the years, my wife who is here, and some of my friends, and indeed constituents who are here in the gallery. Some of them I've known for a very, very long time. I am honored by the privilege to be a parliamentary representative for the people of St. Thomas. I'm privileged by that honor as well. And I say so, Mr. Speaker, because I know very well that the process which brought me here, by virtue of winning a nomination within the Barbados Labour Party, and the process of also participating in the recent elections, brought me ever so closer to the community that nurtured me, that made me the man who I am today. It would be ungrateful for me if I were not to acknowledge that some of the very people who I caught the bus with going to school, one of them is sitting here in the gallery. We had deep conversations about getting back involved in politics. It is people like Mr. Dwight Scott, who sits here, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Grantley Ali, Mr. Alvin Jones, and so many others, even Marceline, who I met only 2 years ago. Members of the Barbados Labour Party family. Some of them came to me and asked me to consider taking over from Cynthia Ford, who I must now also acknowledge played a critical role in nurturing me over the last 25 years as a member of this party. I also want to acknowledge Sir David Simmons, one of my mentors, from the time I came to the bar with you, Mr. Speaker, 26 years ago. He took me under his wing and has not let me out of his sight as a legal mentor. He was my first parliamentary representative when I got involved in politics and started to vote. And I say all that, Mr. Speaker, because it is not lost on me that it is the Barbados Labour Party family to whom I owe my position in this House today. I did not go to the people in St. Thomas on my own accord. I did not walk in communities in Arthurseat, in Allenview, or in Erie Court, St. Thomas, because I was venturing out on a political sojourn on my own accord. I have been a member of this party for over 26 years. I've worked throughout this party, and it is the Barbados Labour Party's branch in St. Thomas that puts me here. I've subscribed to the policies of this party, I've defended this party and the party's interests, and all the interest groups, including the trade unions that suffered under the last administration of the Democratic Labour Party. We represented those, you and I, sir, when time was important for us to pay homage to labor and to protect the rights that the great founders of our democracy had held in great esteem. It is because of that that I stand here. I cannot, therefore, associate with a betrayal of the people who have worked so hard to get me here, simply for naked, selfish, personal reasons. Sir, anti-defection legislation is a critical part of preserving democratic legitimacy, the democratic legitimacy of the people's choice. It protects the mandate that voters give to us as elected representatives. In parliamentary democracies across the world, this legislation has found its way into being, because we understand that people don't only vote for individuals, they vote for the political party that they associate with. They vote for the party's ideologies and policies, and the subscription to the party's manifesto that has been presented at elections. Sir, if elected representatives are allowed to switch sides at the drop of a hat, after winning, after mounting a platform on behalf of a political party, after telling people that they are subscribing to the policies of a particular political party, it effectively overturns the decision of the voters. Anti-defection laws, Mr. Speaker, prevent the betrayal and preserves the electoral mandate of the people. It is about democratic legitimacy, pure and simple. We don't stand here, sir, in our own names. In the last election, there were 93 candidates. Some of them were independents. They stood in their own names, those independents. But the ones that stood under the banner of a political party, Mr. Speaker, did so on the basis that they were telling the people, I represent what this party says. The mandate of my political party is something that I wear as a badge of honor. Party switching, Mr. Speaker, and you must forgive me after many years in the other place as I get accustomed to calling you that, has led to the collapse of governments, the breakdown of coalitions, and some horse trading. Even in the region, we have seen the demise of a government in Guyana on the basis of a party switch on the floor of that parliament, and therefore the collapse of a government in more recent times. In Barbados, we have seen party switching led to the obfuscation of the electoral result. The Honourable Member for St. Michael, Northeast, the Honourable Prime Minister, made reference to 1989 when 4 members of the Democratic Labour Party backbench displaced the elected opposition. And what that did was to silence the voice of almost 45% of the voters who would have voted for the Barbados Labour Party in the 1986 general election. No voice. Their senators had to be displaced. That is one of the unfortunate consequences of crossing the floor. We saw in 2018, the Honourable Member then for St. Michael West crossed the floor shortly after the Labour Party won government in 2018. Formed his own political party. Did not even run in the seat in which he was elected, essentially betraying the people of St. Michael West for the duration of that parliamentary term. And what has become of that political party on the political landscape of Barbados? The political historians and those who are astute will assess that crossing of the floor in a much less generous way that I am prepared to, or the rules allows me to speak to. But the fact is that the political party that was formed was one of convenience that has now gone from the face of the political landscape in Barbados, and one can only safely conclude that the reasons proffered were not genuine in the circumstances. In 2024, Mr. Thorne crossed the floor. When I had the honor to come back to parliamentary life in 2022, I joined the Barbados Labour Party parliamentary team, and I've never seen, in the 2 years before Mr. Thorne crossed the floor, him attended a single meeting of the parliamentary party between 2022 when he came back and 2024. No single member of the government criticized him. No single member of the government sought to reprimand him. In fact, we tolerated his absence from the deliberations of the parliamentary group. Didn't attend annual conference. Didn't attend meetings or anything of the sort, or participated in the political life of the Barbados Labour Party. No one sought to ostracize him. No one sought to discipline him. But I know that the way in which the Barbados Labour Party is organized, several young members of this party started seeing Christchurch South as a possible political choice. And that angered him, and that is why he could not run in Christchurch South, because he knew he had abandoned the people. But what he has done is succeeded in wrestling the leadership of the party, denuding it of its members, expelling the former leaders and general secretaries, and leading the Democratic Labour Party to one of its worst electoral performances, all out of selfish ambition. He sat within the Barbados Labour Party, criticized the Democratic Labour Party government, and then all of a sudden, he now leaves the Barbados Labour Party and goes to say, I want to join another political party, and it has to be the DLP. That is a fact. But he's led them to a situation where several of the candidates in the last election lost their deposits. Very few of them getting more than a handful of votes, especially the one in St. Thomas. 20 of those candidates, Mr. Speaker, got 30% of the vote or less in the last election. 17 of those candidates getting less than 1,000 votes. This is a record in the history of politics in Barbados. And this is Mr. Thorne's record, you know. 10 candidates got between 1,000 and 2,000 votes, and only 3 candidates for the Democratic Labour Party got more than 2,000 votes in a general election. As the Right Honourable Member for St. Michael North, he said, the apathy can only be explained by the Democratic Labour Party failing to bring out people to vote for it. It does not lie in the Barbados Labour Party. And the people of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, have continued to show their confidence in the leadership of this country. So I say to you, for those who criticize this amendment to our Constitution, on what basis could one justify crossing the floor after having subscribed to a party's manifesto, after extolling its policies on the platform and defending the programs of the government? On what basis could you cross the floor to overturn the legitimate democratic voice of the people? On what basis could that be justified? I've heard people criticize the bill as silencing one's freedom of expression. That is not so, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't silence anyone's freedom to express themselves politically. And even if you felt that you had the right to freedom of expression, the right is counterbalanced by other considerations. The public interests and the rights and freedoms of others. The right of the voters who voted for you, holding up a manifesto, wearing the party's colors, and asking them to support the party has to be a more important consideration than your own personal right. Because we are not elected on a personal basis. We are not elected in our own name. All of us come in the name of a political party. And therefore, our personal interests can never trump the interests of the people. Mr. Speaker, I also note in my researches that in countries which have brought this legislation into force, have had to deal with the horse trading and the corruption that exists in the political environment. Defections have often been motivated by money considerations, by ministerial positions being offered or even being taken away, and some personal political gain, whether it be securing of a higher pension or a higher salary. These are the real considerations that the evidence shows has led to this legislation being put in place in many Commonwealth countries. This law curbs such practices by disqualifying members who defect and making unethical the political bargaining that they might want to undertake. Sir, by examining this bill, the anti-defection laws have, in many countries, ensured party discipline. Only a strong, disciplined political party can lead to a successful country, whether the people choose one party or the other. History does not know any unstable political institutions leading a successful country. It also enables coherent decision-making. Within the bowels of a political organization, Mr. Speaker, a robust political debate can only ensue in a stable setting, a setting that, like the Barbados Labour Party, allows for a big tent. Several of us in here, all from different and varied backgrounds and experiences, Mr. Speaker, allows for proper, mature deliberations. But what holds it and binds it together, Mr. Speaker, is the collective responsibility that exists within a disciplined political party. At the constitutional level, perhaps more importantly, a law like this promotes accountability. It allows the populace to know that if you stand for something and we give you the vote, and for even those who did not vote for me, they know that I am accountable to them because this is what I stood for. And if I ever have to depart from there, and I will not depart from the bosom of the Barbados Labour Party, but if anybody has to depart from the political party, this law requires you to go back and get your mandate from the people who have put you here. It is not a high threshold at all. It promotes the ethical conduct of parliamentarians. We're talking about democratic legitimacy. It also promotes the faith in our democratic institutions. Mr. Speaker, one of the criticisms you hear is that when we look at the manner and form of this amendment, there's a difficulty in the mention of political parties because a political party is not recognized in the Constitution. I've heard that and I've assessed it for what it was. And I've come to the conclusion that that statement has now become so popular. It now rests in that realm where something becomes very popular. It makes my antenna go up to examine it even more deeper. It is untrue. The Constitution of Barbados, like many constitutions in democratic countries, recognize political parties. It may not recognize a political party or a particular political party by its name, because to do so would be to institutionalize a political party in perpetuity. When that political party might fall out of favor with the democratic populace over time, you have institutionalized the political party by name by placing that in the Constitution. That doesn't make sense. That is actually anti-democratic. To formally recognize one or more political parties in a country's constitution is anti-democratic, because it forever creates the statutory and constitutional right of the political party to exist, even if that is against the will of the people. So that is why the framers of constitutions all over the world have not fallen to the temptation that you should recognize a political party by name in a constitution. But when we look at our constitution, the process of our democracy demands the recognition of political parties, but not a particular political party. Because the government is formed by the members who have the majority. And in most cases, that is a combination of one political party or a coalition. So it recognizes that a political party must form a government. It also recognizes that a political party must form the opposition, because the opposition is created by the members, the majority of the members who do not support the government. So the word political party does not have to be placed into the text of the Constitution for it to have constitutional force. So this notion that political parties are not mentioned in the Constitution or not recognized in the Constitution is really ramshot talk. And I'm disappointed that some esteemed members of my profession have been given to such commentary. Because if you look at the whole structure of our Constitution, government and opposition, you look at the standing orders of Parliament, how the Parliament is constituted from its very beginning, how the Speaker is chosen. Everything reads that there is a role for the political parties organizing themselves within the fabric of our constitutional government. So I want to dismiss that notion, sir, that the government has brought a bill which for the first time introduces the concept of a political party. But what we are doing, sir, is the codification of certain rules and standards. The reason why that is important is because for a long time, it was thought that these things operate by way of convention and people accept the conventions of the past which has held our democracy together. We live in a different world. We live in a world where conventions become matters of convenience. And when they become matters of convenience, we lose our way. What we're seeing in the country, in my respectful view, Mr. Speaker, is that the convention against crossing the floor, in a few examples which we have had in the history of Barbados politics, it is not the norm. But what we're seeing is a normalization of the crossing of the floor effectively to solve the democratic deficit in the Democratic Labour Party. And that is why Professor George Bell described it as a dishonest solution, because the resolution of the leadership of the party and the DLP is not happening in an organic way from the grassroots up. And what is a political convenience of a member of the Barbados Labour Party switching over to come in that seat, which is now vacant, and I see the honourable member for the city of Bridgetown has made all of us move down, because when we came here on Friday for the first sitting, he was at the end, but I am not surprised that that is now vacant and he's wanted to avoid sitting in that particular spot. But what, Mr. Speaker, I do recognize is that the democratic deficit that is facing the political party, which is now getting half the votes it was getting, even in its worst performances throughout our history. A situation of convenience allows us to forget the principle. The legitimacy of the voice of the people in an election is the most important consideration in a democracy. Preserving the voice of the people as they have voted is more important than one's own personal interests. And the moment that we start to depart from those high principles that have extolled the greatest politicians that have sat and stood from these benches, Mr. Speaker, is a time when we start to unravel the fabric of our democracy. And I firmly believe that if you cross the floor and you tolerate that disingenuous and dishonest solution to solve the political deficit in the Democratic Labour Party, and we allow that now to be the norm, where the convention operated against it. Because we know that this country has not, I think there's perhaps only one example of Don Blackman crossing the floor and retaining his seat. Hamilton Lashley may be the second one. But all of the others, including the Right Excellent Arabar, lost their seat when they crossed the floor. That is how the people of Barbados have treated to those situations. Richie Haynes has lost his seat. Barney, others lost their seats in the '56 general election, all throughout the ages. No one is stopping a person from resigning and going to join another political party. But if you get elected on a democratic mandate from the people, this law requires you to go back to the people for validation and reaffirmation. That is democracy at work. That is a legitimate democratic exercise by involving the people who put you there in a fundamental decision about who represents them. What can be undemocratic about that? Giving the people the final say. And anytime you hear people say, man, no, the people should not have a say, those are the persons you have to be careful about. Because if you ever give them power in a small country like Barbados, given the track record as how they manage their own political party, Krapos won't be pipe, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. It preserves the democratic legitimacy by ensuring that the elected representatives to this House remain faithful to the electoral mandate they sought and obtained from the people of Barbados. It will prevent the opportunistic behavior and the naked selfish ambition fueled by disappointment over non-ministerial appointments or posts, or even persons trying to secure a better pension. That is the real motivation for the most recent crossing of the floor in Barbados. And everybody in Barbados knows it. It prevents, as I said, the opportunistic political behavior, but more importantly, sir, it promotes stability. It protects the will of the people, which is the foundation of democracy. And Mr. Speaker, that is something that I will associate myself with. To you, sir, I am obliged.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 1:30 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 1:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 1:30 p.m.